So, on Forest Focus, as it finishes 0-0 at the City Ground between Nottingham Forest and Villarreal, who stood out? Who has a little bit of work to do? Did we see Nuno name his starting 11? We'll discuss all that and reported interest in Arsenal sporting director Edu in the company of, first of all, Reds fan Paul Morley. Paul, good to have you with us. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Matt. Yeah, good. Good to see football back at the City Ground. Looking forward to the season ahead. So, yeah, good to be here.
Second guest is Pete Blackburn. Are you well?
Yeah, not bad. Fresher than I thought I'd be after last night's members' social. So, enjoyed the game, not feeling too rough, and happy to be here.
Yeah, enjoyed the members' social yesterday very much indeed. I mentioned that towards the end. Pete's kindly joining us at pretty short notice. It was going to be Chris from Forest All Over, Chris Aylmer, my friend of the show, but his dad died sadly this week. So thoughts with Chris. Obviously, he stepped away, but hope to have him back on soon. Lovely guy, and I'm sure his dad was a lovely guy as well, if his son's anything to go by. So yeah, thoughts with Chris and all the Aylmer family back in Ireland. Right. Why don't you kick us off, Paul? What did you make of tonight in general? What you saw? Good, bad, indifferent?
I thought it had pre-season written all over it, didn't it? I know that. I guess the result it's pretty irrelevant at this stage, isn't it? But I thought first half ball retention could have been a little bit better, a little bit sloppy. But as we grew into the game, the second half seemed a lot better in terms of that side of the game. I think we pretty much dominated second half, didn't we? So yeah, I think at this stage, I think that the guys on commentary made the point that fitness-wise, we looked quite a bit ahead of Villarreal, which was promising. And some of the comments about, we've not had any players away at the Euros, and we've obviously had a good build-up through the pre-season, through the type of opposition that we played. So I think that showed tonight. I think we're slowly but surely getting there. There's obviously still a few things to work on, particularly in the final third. But yeah, all in all, can't complain. I thought it was a solid, steady performance, and again, the guys will go away and know what they've got to work on between now and Bournemouth on the 17th.
Yeah, I agree with that. It was solid and steady. I mean, it was it's pre-season game, never going to be a classic Pete. Did you see enough there to take positives from it?
Very much so. I mean, I think I might be slightly higher on it than you guys were, actually. I think that's been a really positive evening for Forest. I'd say we look like a side largely ready for a Premier League season. That's not something that we've been able to say in previous pre-seasons where things have looked a lot messier. We looked very fit. I think there are clear signs of progression from several key individuals and the team as a whole. I think it looks like we've benefited from a significant decrease in the amount of change around the first team picture. And I think there's a sense of cohesion and understanding developing in that side. And given that's the first time we've played a friendly and this pre-season where we've sort of gone out with, ostensibly what looks like a sort of first 11, I think that's only going to build and looks pretty positive to me. I think we came out for both halves with genuine intent, and I think that's a really good sign because, it looks like we're setting a blueprint for how we want to play this season, and perhaps in sort of enforce ourselves on the game a little bit more than we have done in the first two Premier League seasons. So just reading between the lines and trying to take some of those assessments, I'm really positive about it. I mean, one of the most pleasing things for me is that we didn't look like we've lost the sort of sense of dynamism that we can have in that swift counter-attack. It didn't really come off for us tonight, but there were moments where players interlinked really nicely and it was sharp and it was quick, and you can see how it will be a threat there as it develops. But we're also clearly adding this sort of steady possession side to the game as well, and that's something we've just not had in our first two seasons of the Premier League. It's something we've been crying out for, I think, an ability to slow things down, to keep possession, dominate things a little bit, and work our way into a game rather than just waiting for a counter-attack. So all really positive stuff. For me, a night of individual and collective promise, and I think that's all you can really hope for at this time, and a display of a good level of fitness, and it gives me plenty of faith that we can make a positive start to the season. Above all else, no clear injuries, lots of minutes for good players, patterns of play developing, absolutely ideal.
Did it look to you, Paul, like we're almost there in attack? Like Pete says, there were a lot of promising moments, and I think we only created that one chance where Chris Wood had that volley on target. But those nearly moments are promising because there is a structure and a plan there, and there's pace there as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was the one incident that I had written down, the Wood volley in the first half. That was typical sort of quick transition, wasn't it? Gibbs White being given the ball after someone won it back, just inside our own half, releasing Elanga, first time cross. That was, all the best bits of us from last year, coming to the fore, and he was unlucky not to find the back of net. He almost hit it too well, didn't he? It got straight to the goalkeeper. But I mean, even aside from that, there's a couple of opportunities. I think after Taiwo came on, the one right in the last minute where I think he was just about offside. There's one a bit before that as well, where Gibbs White slipped a lovely ball through to him with the outside of his foot. That with a fit Taiwo with minutes under his belt, you'd think one touch out of his feet and bang on target, but it didn't quite have that shot. So yeah, absolutely, signs were there, and there may have been one or two other moments as well just that escaped me, but absolutely, yeah, I think we again, if we can dominate the ball in that middle of the park, as I say, first half I thought we were a little bit sloppy with the ball retention between Danilo and Sangare, but second half that improved, and that then meant that we got into those positions where we could feed the front three, and yeah, as I say, with a bit of sharpness, then you'd hope that those sort of situations would be more fruitful going forward.
I think my not reservation, Pete, the reason I'm not as high on it as you is there's a couple of players that I don't think they've had the best pre-seasons and in defence. So Nico probably got caught out a couple of times. The penalty was a factor in the penalty, and I 100% start him, and I thought he recovered quite well. I don't know if the bigger concern is the right word, but Murillo hasn't. I don't think he's had a great pre-season. I don't think he looks as on it and at it as other players. Again, he's given away another penalty tonight. I don't know. I kind of think just remember to do the defending first. Like, it's great seeing him take free kicks and it's great seeing him make barnstorming runs. But I thought the fact he injured that bloke shows that maybe he's not actually 100% sharp yet. So that's why I'm not quite as at it as you, as positive as you. Any concerns about either of those players or not?
Yeah, no, I don't agree. I don't disagree with any of that. I think it's worth keeping things in perspective. Obviously, it's just a couple of pre-season games where we've seen errors. I mean, in Nico's case, he's obviously struggled towards the end of last season with injury and such like. And the thing that makes me feel less concerned about him is that we did see in the early stages of the game that they managed to get in behind him a couple of times, and we've seen that in pre-season early on. But he definitely grew into the game, in my estimation. I don't think he made, unless I missed any while I was buffering or just because I was not paying attention well enough. I think that changed pretty quickly as the game went on, and he looked pretty sharp to me. He looked quite positive going forwards, linked up well with Elanga as well. So my instinct was that as the game went on, he was improving, and I suspect he probably just needs time and minutes to grow into it. But I'm not desperately concerned about him. We have seen a few of those moments, no doubt, particularly with the winger getting in behind him and him sort of looking like he's flapping to get back and try and stop the cross or the shot. But like I say, I think he showed improvement. I mean, on Murillo, I really don't want to come on here and have like a big reaction to one sort of slightly sloppy performance I said slightly sloppy is probably a bit generous, but one sloppy performance in a pre-season game. But there's no doubt that he didn't look himself tonight. I think it's probably sharpness, isn't it? Because I mean, the passing in the first half particularly was pretty sketchy. Quite a number of moments where he picked out Villarreal players with ambitious passes and even some less ambitious ones. We all know the sort of player he is, and we want him to be doing those sorts of things, but it doesn't look like he's quite on it. And as you say, I mean, the two big moments, the penalty and then sending their lad off injured. I mean, I thought the commentators were very kind to Murillo in both circumstances, to be honest. I mean, the first one, they seemed to be suggesting that he couldn't possibly have seen the guy was there, even though he was looking straight at him. And he just absolutely smashed him, which was, not ideal. And same again for the second, really. I mean, it's clumsy at best and not ideal. But look, he's a real class act, isn't he? It may be that he's had a great off-season, getting married and all that sort of stuff, and hopefully he'll catch up. I'd say he didn't look brilliantly sharp tonight. But I'm not gonna sort of pan him based on one pre-season game, and I'm hopeful that he'll get up to speed quickly.
Give us your take, Paul, but expand it into Milenkovic as well for the pair. How did you rate them as a pairing?
Yeah, just coming on to Murillo, I agree. I think that I've got written down as well that a couple of sloppy passes in the first half he made, but look, I don't want to, like Pete said, don't want to read too much into it. I think I've got no concerns about Murillo. I think he'll come good. Whether the whole talk of everything that's been happening over the summers sort of let his mind wander a little bit, and he's still sort of coming back into focus, perhaps, they say, getting married. So, but I think, next couple of weeks, I'm sure Nuno and the rest of the guys will be making sure he's fully ready. So, like I say, no concerns about him. Milenkovic, again, didn't really have a lot to do, did he? But there's a couple of occasions where he stepped in front of Danjuma, wasn't it? I think twice at least. One when he shepherded it back to Sales, and another one where he just sort of dealt with it and cleared it out. He looked really solid, composed. Anything that was asked of him, he did it. And I think that's all you want really from a centre back, isn't it? I think just generally from the defensive point of view, corners wise, I think there was one, wasn't in the first half, which went through the box and Aina sort of headed it back into the danger zone. So there's still some work to do there. I think I still felt a little bit edgy on corners. But yeah, as a pairing, clearly Nuno, it feels like that's his first choice pairing, and I'm very comfortable with that. And I think the more they play together, hopefully they build up that understanding, and touch wood, they both stay fit, and they can be the basis of a solid backline for the rest of the season, or certainly for the first half of the season.
Yeah, I thought Milenkovic was a good steady 7 out of 10. A nice debut. I think you're right as well about reading of the play, composed. So yeah, I do certainly agree with that. I don't think Aina had a great first half, but he was much better second. And again, no concerns there. Just a bit of pre-season sharpness. What about in goal, Pete? With what's working through the team, it looks like Sells is going to get the nod ahead of Miguel. Isn't it? Miguel only got the 15 minutes, so we'll probably have that confirmed by team selection via Olympiacos. The right call for you if that's how he goes?
Well, I mean, obviously the right call is whatever looks like the right call in training. We haven't got any access to that. But I mean, my instinct has always been, I think I've been sort of consistent on this and on the pod, is that it sort of makes sense to stick with Sells and let Carlos Miguel sort of come and do his stuff and settle and find his way into the team. It's not a situation where we're at panic stations. We don't desperately need him to come in and thrive straight away. And I think it's probably a really healthy thing to have a sort of nice, stable environment for him to come into, find his feet, and then, if he's the talent that we hope he is, then, really sort of mount a challenge on Sells. But, I'm happy with where we are with Sells. I think, three of that back four have played with him a lot now. So I think it's a good place to be. Yeah, I'm absolutely grand with that. Yeah, just to add on Milenkovic, I think he's going to be a really, really positive addition for us. He looks like exactly what we need. Presence in both boxes, and it looks like he wants to make the opposition really feel his presence as well. He gets touch tight. He's exactly the sort of defender that we've been crying out for, and I think he's going to make a really big contribution for us.
330 people with us, so do us a favour and just hit like on the stream if you haven't already. That would certainly be a big help. I'm kind of going through the first half team because I wonder if that's the starting 11 for Bournemouth, but we'll come back to that. The midfield was interesting. Paul, NJL here commenting on Danilo. I agree. He's really sharp. He does have that loose pass in him, but they're always positive passes, or generally. So I thought he was good, and Sangare was probably my man of the match. What did you make of those two in general? Are they your pairing for Bournemouth?
Yeah, I think for me there are two big questions that I was looking for to be answered, particularly with the team sheet, and one of them was a goalkeeper we just talked about. And I think on that side of things, whatever choice Nuno makes, I'm comfortable with. Given his background as a goalkeeper, you trust him to make the right choice there. The other one was will we see Danilo alongside Sangare and Gibbs White in the midfield, or will Anderson start the game? Obviously went with Danilo. Danilo's obviously, we know the qualities he has. He's box to box, full of energy, offers a lot, both going forward and tracking back. I think they mentioned Aina had a couple of iffy moments in the first half, and I think at least one of them Danilo sort of swept up behind him. So that was a good sort of shows his qualities in that side of the game. I thought when Anderson came on, he looked really, really sharp and some beautiful touches in terms of just manoeuvring players around and creating space and taking up really good positions. He sort of tended to play a little bit off the left, didn't he, when he first came on? So yeah, I think again for me, whoever starts that first game, I think it's 2 from 3. It's 2 from Danilo, Anderson, and Elanga, depending on exactly how Nuno wants to set up. And I'd be again comfortable with any of the combinations out of two of those three. So again, much like the rest of the guys, bits to work on. I thought Sangare. I know there's been lots of comments on here about how well he's sort of looked in the first sort of few games against, I guess, lesser opposition, and tonight was a bit of a stronger test of his mettle. And again, he didn't look out of place. I didn't think he did anything spectacular, but again, I guess that's what you want from a number 6, right? You just want solidity, screening the back four, and I think particularly second half when we dominated possession, he made sure that there was nothing sort of in the offing for Villarreal going forward from their midfield. So yeah, all positive again for him. And whether it's Danilo or Anderson starts next to him, I'm comfortable with either.
Yeah, I thought he was good. He strikes a good balance with Danilo. I'll come on to the other options as well. Are you higher on Danilo's performance than the comment I put up there, Pete? You look like you were.
Yeah, I am. I think Danilo maybe gets a slightly harsh judgment sometimes because of the way he plays in that role. He is a really aggressive pick because from deep he's looking to progress the ball really quickly, and he does take risks. I think both in terms of the way he passes, but also he's looking for one-touch stuff in tight areas in and around his own box. Sometimes he drives forward with the ball. My instinct is that he could have a really big season for us, and he could be pretty transformative for the way we play if he does. I think we're going to have to accept that he's a riskier player in the double pivot than perhaps you might ideally like. But I also think that could be a real massive benefit for us. Having him there means that you can unlock a quick counter attack in no time whatsoever because he is capable of playing those balls. It does mean I think that some will get picked off by the opposition, and sometimes it's gonna look a little bit messy. But my instinct is we should probably stick with it and appreciate what we're getting with him because I think most of the good stuff that happened, he was right at the heart of it. So yeah, I think I'm a little bit higher than you guys.
Thanks very much to Jed Cracknell for becoming a member. Appreciate the support, Jed. Very kind of you. And since we're taking a little interlude, a nice little plug for the Trent Navigation. I've been plugging pizzas all week. That's pizza nights every Wednesday. So I went down on Thursday. So I didn't pay $8.50, but I got a very nice pizza. Very much enjoyed it at the members' social last night. People were abusing me, frankly, for not eating the crusts or all the crusts because I'm trying to watch the calories. Pete's shaking his head here, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. Really good night last night, and there was a really nice vibe amongst the members. And obviously, the Nav's a great venue. Apparently it's absolutely rammed tonight as well, even though it was a pre-season game and there was only about 15,000 people there. So yeah, obviously the premier place to go and very grateful for their support. Pete, you were a bit gutted on Monday that I didn't ask you what your favourite pizza was. So I'm going to give you an opportunity.
No, I don't know. I'm angry with you about last night still, to be honest.
About last night?
Threatened to ruin a perfectly good evening, you failing to eat your crusts like some sort of 8-year-old child. That's absolutely shocking behaviour. Well, I'll give you the boring answer first. Everyone says it, don't they? I think we all want to sound cultured. You're in Naples, you're having a margarita, aren't you? Because it's all about the quality of the produce. I think everyone said that. But I mean, I like a bit of sort of a bit of spicy meat and maybe a bit of ricotta on there. That's nice for me. Nice.
We're on a tight schedule because we've got a lot to get through. But Paul, I have to give you the opportunity as well.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, pizzas. I got introduced to pizzas. I obviously grew up in Nottingham, and anyone who's I'm sure there'll be people in the stream that know Popper Pizza in Beeston, which is where I used to eat the deep pan pizzas from Popper Pizza in Beeston were legendary back in the 1990s. Nowadays, probably a little bit more refined. I like vegetable based pizzas, but with some I don't know, spicy chicken. So maybe onion, mushroom, peppers, and some spicy chicken would be my ideal.
Nice. Now I've told us we're on a tight schedule. I'm now going to ask a follow up. It's deep pan pizza. That's a 90s thing, isn't it? You don't see deep pan very often anymore.
I know exactly. That was all the rage then. Deep pan.
Yeah, it's all thin crust now. We've all got to watch the weight, haven't we? It turns out there's about 3 million calories in deep pan. Yeah.
The Hawaiian debate has started in the comments, so we could be here for a long time now if we get stuck into that.
I'll let people carry on with that debate, and we'll crack on with the discussion. Only other thing on the first half around the team started. Someone's texted me while we were talking, whose opinion I value, saying they think Morgan needs to do more in the 10 when he gets in those positions. know obviously a friendly Paul, but something in that for you still?
I guess with the fact that we finished 0-0 and we had so much of the ball, you could argue that's a valid point, right? So we got into good positions. He was between the lines a few times and was looking, I think, to feed out to Hudson-Odoi once or twice during the first half. And I think once or twice got it to him, once or twice didn't quite get there. So, yeah, I think that's a fair comment. I guess just thinking about the whole sort of balance of the squad or the starting team, I guess when you think about looking ahead to the season, we've probably got, or Nuno's going to want to have options for depending obviously who we're playing against. And I would imagine we've probably got, if you think about the opposition, we've probably got sort of 3, maybe 4, certainly 3 different profiles of matches that you want to have different setups for. So you've got your bottom half teams at home where you're going to want to look to be on the front foot and play a similar formation that we had tonight, where we got the 2 wide players with Gibbs White and a striker. You've got your top 6 probably home and away, which you're going to be a little bit more conservative and probably play with a back 3 and /5, and you sort of forgo some attacking threat, and then you've got everything else sort of in the middle where you've got that blend, I guess, of being adaptable. So I think from a point of view of where Gibbs White fits into all of that, at home he should certainly be playing that front foot number 10 role, and in terms of expecting more from him, goal output. I know Raf, who's in the chat tonight, often talks about Gibbs White needing to have more of a goal output, and I'd agree with that. And I think that's, again, I mentioned this a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago, probably ahead of the Euros. If you compare a couple of years back, or certainly last summer, I think it was, wasn't it, where you had the under 21s, where the 3 standout players for England were Gordon, Gibbs White, and Palmer. And you look what the other 2 have done over the last 12 months, and certainly from a goal perspective, that they've outperformed Gibbs White. So he's got to get in his own mind that he needs to compete with the output of those 2. I think that's got to be his aim for this season. I know Palmer takes penalties and Chelsea get penalties. We never get penalties, right? We've got 1 penalty all season, so that's probably a mitigating factor for him. But yeah, that's got to be his aim. I think he's got to be looking at those 2 guys and saying, I need to match you in terms of my stats, and he's got it within him. We've got to make sure, I think, that we're giving the ball in the right areas, which, given the way that we played last year or the season that we had, he didn't have enough ball in the right areas to be able to affect or to create enough chances to score. But he certainly got it within him. We saw that great finish at Villa, wasn't it, where he went through, just lifted the ball over the keeper. So he's got all kinds of finishes within him. The goal against Man United, the goal in the Cup, where he slammed it into the top corner. So he's got all the ability. And yeah, hopefully, this season is the one where he kicks on from a goal output perspective, particularly, because I think he's got it in him, and we just need to make sure we give him the ball in the right areas to affect the game and do what he can do.
Mark in the comments is vociferously asking us to talk about a striker, Pete. So Chris Wood started the game, and I thought it was a very Chris Wood performance, because I think he thrives on service and chance creation, and I don't recall us creating more than 1 chance for him. He is limited in what he can do, and then Taiwo comes on and doesn't look sharp, but we know what he can do. Again, are we crying out for a new starting striker, like a lot of people are saying in the comments?
I mean, I don't doubt that it would be nice. I think we can't really argue with that. The difficulty is I just don't know where we are with the finances, and that is a really, really expensive bit of business to get someone who walks into your team ahead of those 2. If it's something that we can do, then we should be looking to do it. But I just don't know. I don't know where we are with that. I mean, Wood's performance tonight, it didn't stress me out, because I think there were some real positives. Like I don't know whether this is a bit unfair, really, but when you have a player of his sort of age and recent injury record, I'm watching him pre-season, and I'm sort of wondering, will we see a player who looks like he's aged by this coming season? It didn't look like that to me. It looked like, I mean, there was a few moments where he was driving forward with the ball, and he still looked relatively quick and sort of sharp, and his movement still looks good. There was a couple of moments where I think he probably could have made slightly more of a decent pass into him. I mean, there was one pass from Sangare from deep that found him in just inside the box. I thought it was a great pass, and perhaps with a little bit of sort of slightly tighter first touch, he might have been able to do something. I think there's a couple of moments like that. But, he looked sharp when that ball from Malanga came in, and that was a great ball as well, by the way. I think a couple of those from Malanga tonight, which is promising. I'm not desperately concerned about Wood, and I'm hopeful that we can give Taiwo the sort of space to come back to himself. I think Taiwo, this is another point worth addressing, because he gets an awful lot of criticism in these comments and presumably elsewhere across the Forest world. But I think we do need to be really aware of the situation with him last season. I mean, our own coaching staff have sort of admitted that they rushed him back because of the state of things and where we were. Totally understandable, not a criticism of that, but it's clearly hampered the guy's progress back from fitness. And footballers do sort of make those sacrifices for teams sometimes. I think we have to be aware of that. So he's going to need some time. And look, obviously the record with us isn't great injury-wise, but if we can give him the time and space to get back, keep finding minutes for him, keep building his involvement in the first team, then he's clearly a really serious striker at this level. And I think you saw that tonight, right? As soon as he's on, a sort of a new option in the game opens up, because he can turn and he can run into that space behind. And I think we saw it a couple of times. So it's reassuring that he hasn't lost that. He hasn't lost I don't think he's lost the movement. He's probably just not quite got the sharpness and the pace right now. Hopefully we can see that come back, and I think he's too good a footballer to have lost it totally. So, I mean, I don't know what we're going to do. It's clear that the club have told journalists that they're looking for a striker, but I think finances are going to totally dictate whether that's someone who can walk into the first team, or if it's going to be someone young that we can mould, or if it's just a third choice option. And we've seen very few links, so it's really hard to get a steer on where we're at with that. I think if we start the season with Wood, as it looks like at the moment, I think we'll be okay. There's a lot of goal threat around him. If Gibbs White can step up a little bit, Danilo perhaps crashing the box, those wide men both look dangerous. There's other players who can step in and contribute, like Anderson and such like. So I don't think it's not a sort of season defining problem. I think we'll be okay with what we've got currently. I think we'll be all right, and I think we'll move up the table. But I think it's also pretty clear that that's an area that we're struggling a little bit. And tonight you saw that there was a bit of a lack of threat there, a bit of a lack of presence perhaps. So it's difficult, isn't it? You always want to improve on what you've got, but there's context around it, and I just don't know where we're at with that.
No, I don't know the budget either. My suspicion is we either go all in for someone mad, maybe not Dominic Solanke, but someone we put a hefty bid in for someone, or I wonder if Jota ends up being that third choice striker, because he finished, looking at his record, he finished last season playing as a central striker in Portugal. So I don't know. Like Pete, I wouldn't be panicked if we started the season with Chris Wood, because his goal record under Nuno was exceptional. He just needs the service to maximise him, and we didn't really get it tonight. And he does look like he's got a little bit of work to do, but he's got a couple of goals in pre-season. So yeah, not concerned. Taiwo's the bigger one to get Taiwo right. I mean, I'll put up the graphic of the team that started. It sort of leads into the discussion around is this the team that starts the season? I assume people know this, but I'll just read out the team that started the game. Matt Sells in goal. The back four was Williams, Milenkovic, Murillo and Aina. Sangare and Danilo were the two in front, with Elanga and Hudson-Odoi wide and Gibbs White in support of Chris Wood. I wonder if that's 10 of the 11 or 11 of the 11, Paul, that starts v Bournemouth. What are your thoughts on that side?
Yeah, I think as I said before, I guess the big question for me is whether Anderson comes into that team. I think the rest is pretty. Again, the goalkeeper. Well, that was a question before the game, but I think it is clear that Sells is going to start the season. So for me, it's a question whether Anderson can displace probably either Danilo or Elanga. And obviously, if it's Elanga, then you're probably going to play with a slightly narrower sort of someone tucked in from one side or the other. Whether Hudson-Odoi maybe switches to the right and Anderson tucks in from the left, or if it's instead Danilo, then that's the Gary Birtles suggestion, or the team that I suggested the other day that Gary Birtles shot down in flames with the sort of I guess Gibbs White and Anderson taking it in turns to sort of drop into the role. You've got Danilo in there, so yeah, I think we're pretty much there. Like I said a minute ago, again, maybe went a bit early on that there'll be different setups for different games for sure. And we all know that. But for Bournemouth in particular, I'd be very comfortable if that was the starting 11. I just think Anderson's probably the one that is going to give Nuno the biggest headache when it comes to that team and whether he can fit him in there somewhere.
Just on Taiwo P as well, I did see a comment on Twitter, saying that we were doing another Omar Richardson naming him on the bench when he wasn't fit. Just put clubs off that we're trying to buy from. At least he got on. It shows he's in the mix. To me, though, is he out of the reckoning for a start now against Bournemouth because he's just not had anywhere near enough minutes. He can't start against Bournemouth, can he?
I wouldn't have thought so. Seems pretty unlikely. Certainly last season when he came back in, was it January, I think, he looked like he needed time to come back. I don't think that was the case the previous season when he came back from injury and sort of fired us to survival. But no, he doesn't look like someone who's going to be starting in the Premier League in a couple of weeks, I don't think. But hopefully he'll be able to get a few more minutes next time out and then just build from there. That's how I see it. And on the team selection you got up there, I think Paul's absolutely bang on. For me, it's a question of one player, and that's Elliot Anderson. He looks every time he plays like he deserves to be in the first 11, but the difficult bit is finding the space for him. You want both of those wide men because they offer so much threat, and there's a real intent about playing with them both there. I think it's hard to drop Danilo right now personally because I think he just gives us the opportunity to get the ball to those guys quickly, and I think that's pretty vital if we're going to play them both. So it's hard to see where he gets in. I mean, I think in my predicted team last time we spoke, or the time before, I had Anderson in for Elanga, and I still think that's a genuine option, particularly perhaps going to a 3-man midfield with Gibbs White sort of floating in between that role and where Elanga is now, because it might give us a little bit more control and a little bit more stability in midfield, particularly against teams that flood that area. So that's an option, but I think 10 or 11 of those will be playing, won't they?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple of interesting ones, like you're saying, Anderson for maybe Danilo. It depends on the game as well. Like Anderson probably gives us more control of the ball, maybe when we're away from home. Dominguez is the other one who I think's got maybe more of a role away from home, covering ground, making us more solid. But this is probably the team I think we will see against Bournemouth, the way it's shaping up. Any final thoughts on the games, chaps, starting with Paul, on what we saw tonight?
Not really. Like I said before, I think both teams probably were playing at 75-80% of throttle, and I guess that's the biggest plus, I guess, was no injuries, right? We had no injuries. I think in terms of the other subs that came on, probably worth just giving a mention. Toff had a couple of bright moments, and he bursted down the left hand side, looked sharp. Albert, we didn't really see much of. Moreira, yeah, again, he looked comfortable on the ball, didn't he? I mean, a lot of people saying in the comments about Moreira pushing Williams, so I don't see that necessarily from a starting perspective just yet, but clearly we've got a good one there, and was he 17, 18, and huge potential to grow. So really encouraged by generally pre-season. So we didn't see a huge amount of him tonight, but what we did see looked fairly solid. So yeah, again, without repeating myself, solid signs, good overall sort of stability, and I think, as you said right at the start, Pete, we've got pretty much. There's only Milenkovic, I think, wasn't there, who was not from last season, who started the game. So that continuity, I think, is a really key element. I think I know we've obviously added players in the last 24 hours, 48 hours, and there's more coming. One of the key things I think that's going to be really important for Forest this season is that the manager knows who his best 11 are. And I mentioned those 3 sort of different profile matches before. So you've probably got 3 different best 11s in mind. And I think that's probably where, as a team, as a club, we've struggled a bit in the last couple of seasons, particularly, and this is no criticism of Cooper, given all the influx of players he had. But, I think season 1, it took him he stumbled upon a formula by accident rather than design in that Tottenham Cup game, which then sort of saw us through for the rest of the season. And again, Nuno, certainly Cooper for the first half of last season, that influx of players on deadline day never really found his best 11. Nuno probably had an 11 in mind that he couldn't really use given the situation we were in at the end of last season. So that's going to be really crucial. I think at the moment, with the additions that we've made, we're probably just on the right side of the line of not having too many options. I know that sounds silly, but we've learned. Hopefully, we've learned from the past couple of seasons that if you flood the squad with too many players, it creates confusion, and that's the last thing you want is the manager not knowing what his best 11 is. So as long as Nuno's got a core of probably 13, 14, 15 players in mind that he's going to use in any given situation across those different match profiles, which it feels like at the minute he has. Obviously, we're yet to see Jota and assuming Ramon Sosa, if he comes in, what they can add to the mix. But I think that's just really important to have that core squad that you want to use every week. Obviously, there's going to be injuries, which is going to mean we're going to go beyond that 14, 15. But I think that's really important. And I think that's crucial from a recruitment point of view, that we don't get too carried away and start adding too many bodies into the mix and confuse the picture.
Yeah, I agree. I think you make valid points there. Dean makes good points. Well, I know you were talking about not having too many players, but equally, I suppose, Pete, you need to be able to change games off the bench. We've spent a lot of time this summer talking about starting 11s because it's interesting, but it is a squad game. And, we discussed a lot of midfield options there, wide options when Sosa comes in. You do need that. We can't just concentrate on the starting 11, can we?
No, I think there were a lot of moments last season where you would have felt great sympathy for Nuno when he was turning around and looking at his options to try and change a game, save a game, hold on to a game. And I think it's going to be a little bit different this season. I mean, Anderson on his own, I think, makes a massive difference to that because he can come on and play in so many different roles. And by the looks of pre-season, it looks like he can do all of them with absolute aplomb. He's going to be able to come on and keep the ball for you if that's what you need to do. He's going to be able to come on and help try and unlock the door if that's what you need to do. Fill in so many different roles. That's a huge positive for me and all the others as well. There's plenty of players on that bench. I mean, I think I sort of consistently feel like we don't talk about the potential of Dominguez enough. I think he's just a really, really talented footballer who can pop up all over the place and change a game potentially. So he's another option. And if we can get Taiwo fitter and firing, then either him or Wood are going to be a good option off the bench. So I think we're in a much better place, especially when you think that there's definitely going to be more to come. And obviously we've got potentially Jota to bring into that if he sticks around as well. I mean, just to answer the question that you gave to Paul about if there's anything else from the game, the one thing that really struck me was that we've sort of already moved on from that PSR soft deadline, as I think we're calling it now. But in that first half, I did just take a minute to think. I just did not think we'd be seeing these players play again for Forest at this point. I was so sure that we'd have already lost, one or maybe even more of those guys. So it's worth having a bit of perspective and just feeling lucky, I think. There's obviously plenty of time left for us to lose someone, but as we've said so many times, at least we're going to do that from a position of strength now. So it'll hopefully be a good deal for everyone if we do. And if we don't, then my God, we're going to have some fun watching some of those players for another half a season or full season. And just one last thing, lovely to see the young lad come on and play again. I think it's a nice statement of intent from Forest to keep involving him. He always looks really at home on the pitch, and I'm just really hopeful that he can be another one to have a bright future. That sort of side of things, that pathway, it just feels so crucially important to me as a Forest fan invested in this community and the club. So really nice to see that continuing.
What you say there about the squad and PSR kind of leads nicely into the other topic I wanted to discuss tonight. There was a report or a tweet before the game from Bruno Andrade, who's pretty well up on, he was covering the Silva signing and some of the other stuff we've done. And he's tweeted that Evangelos Marinakis is looking to recruit Arsenal sporting director Edu to join both Olympiacos and Forest, basically effectively as a joint CEO of the two clubs, which is highly ambitious. So yeah, I'm not knocking it at all. I think it's great, but I'm struggling to see it happening, Paul, because mostly because I imagine Edu's got unfinished business, to quote Billy Davies at Arsenal, hasn't he? He's not going to want to leave until they win a trophy, is he?
I'd be surprised if he did, but who knows the colour of money, right? If Marinakis can seduce him with a project and some hefty bonuses for elevating Forest into the position that he wants to, then who knows? you never say never in football, do you? You don't quite know what's going to happen. But clearly, I looked at some of the comments, I guess, from the Arsenal fans on the back of the tweets that were going on tonight, and it was broadly along the lines of keep your effing hands away from him. So that to me says that that they hold him in very high regard into what he's done. I think it was 2019, was it? So he's kind of been there pretty much alongside Arteta for that whole journey. So you just look at the way that club's progressed over the last 4 or 5 years, and personally, if I was going to bet on who I think is going to win the league next year, I think they are at a point where they could seriously challenge. I know they have challenged City, but I think they could. I'd back them to win the league next year. So, and I think Edu's obviously played a part in that behind the scenes in getting them to where they are. So, if you think about the way that the Arsenal squad's been built, young players getting more and more progressive into the peak of their careers, and it feels like we are moulding a squad similar to that in terms of age profile. So if Edu was to come in, and it's difficult to know exactly how much of a say he'd have in the day-to-day running of things, of course, but clearly he's had a positive impact on Arsenal. So if by hook or by crook we could pull that off, I think it would be as you say, a great statement of intent, ambitious, and it would really sort of probably ruffle a few feathers within the football community, and make a statement about where Forest want to be.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we always have to recalibrate our expectations, the ambitions of the owner. I mean, he is aiming to sprint, which is great. Well, sometimes I think it's not great, actually. I don't think it was so great in the Championship because it's not a kind of league where you can necessarily sprint out of it. But the way we're going about it in the Premier League right now, the recruitment of people behind the scenes in the last year has been really good. And Edu feels like another really ambitious move. I suppose, Pete, if you look at it, he came to Arsenal in December 2019. Arteta was appointed maybe slightly before that. He has backed him to the hilt, shown a lot of patience, and that their recruitment and their evolution, bringing in players like Zinchenko and Gabby Jesus to take them to the next level, shows what can be done. He's obviously made a big contribution to their progression. What do you make of this?
Well, I've got absolutely no insight as to whether it's a realistic prospect or not, if there's any truth to it. But if there is, I mean, for once, I think ambition's a good word to use. Sometimes we bandy that around a lot, but I think you couldn't really argue with that. I mean, it's hard to appraise sporting directors because you often don't see the fruits of their work until you're a bit further down the line. It's a bit different to sort of managers where you see a much more instant impact. But I mean, certainly my impression is one of a sort of strong leader who empowers his manager rather than sort of looming over him and threatening him, which you often see with people in those sorts of roles. And the business that Arsenal have done in recent years, I mean, is generally pretty impressive, I think. The way that they've moved up the league and now seem like a sort of obvious and consistent competitor to Man City, who are, the most ruthless and ridiculous football team we've ever seen in this country, is pretty impressive. I think he just seems like a calm and composed sort, and clearly has great gravitas in the game. So I can't see any downside to it really. I mean, if it's a sort of global CEO role, then I'd say that's potentially quite a different role to what he's got at Arsenal at the moment. They have a CEO, I think, Vinay Venkatesham is there and has been for a while. So his role is much more like what Ross Wilson's is here, I think, in terms of being the sort of the leader of all of those sporting departments. CEO role is obviously much bigger than that. Lots of non-football operations, I suppose. So I've no idea if he's suited to those sorts of things. I couldn't possibly say, but he does. I'm sort of loath to mention the documentary. I can't remember whether it was one of the Amazon ones or which channel it was on, but he came across as really impressive. I thought sort of unflappable, real sense of where he was going and how to carry that out. And obviously, that's a very manicured piece of journalism, for want of a better word. So it's hard to know what to take from it. But I don't think you can pretend all of those things. And I think good leaders are good leaders because of their values and the way that they empower other people. And it looks like he's that sort of guy. So I think whatever role it would be, he'd be a hell of a get for us. No harm in having that sort of ambition, is there? And I mean, it would be, I guess if you were thinking, is he going to come to Forest as a sporting director? That'd be absolutely mad. There's no way he's taking that step. But it could be a much bigger role and a route into bigger things for him. So who knows?
Can I just add one thing? Sorry.
Please do.
I was just going to say, clearly we're active, very active in that Brazilian South American market, and so he fits that profile of helping us tap into that even more. He's obviously got a very good reputation given his career in that market. So in that sense, it kind of makes sense that we would be looking to bolster our reputation if indeed it seems like that's going to be a key source of recruitment for us going forward, and a key source of complying with PSL going forward, finding these unpolished diamonds like Murillo and possibly the Sosa guy and one or two others going forward, Miguel, and Edu's only going to help that if he were to come in. So it could be this Andrade guy adding 2 and 2 together and coming up with 5, but there's obviously an ambition from Forest perspective to really be a key attractive proposition for players in that South American market, and Edu's would only enhance that reputation, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a real believe it when I see it thing, but it was a really interesting report and notion, certainly one meriting discussion. Before we go, as Dean says, do us a favour, hit like on the video. That would be great. And thank you very much to Tim Richards for becoming a member as well, joining Jed. Very kind of you, Tim, and Jed as well, obviously. Appreciate that support, chaps. Right. Any other business before we go, Pete Blackburn?
No, just to add to what you said at the start, sending all the very best to Chris and his family at a horribly difficult time. Very good. Very true. Paul, anything from you?
Yeah, just a couple of guys in the comments have mentioned about, I said at the start, good to see football back at the City Ground. I think it was 21,000 was it there tonight, and hearing Muller Kintyre was great. At the start, it was that sort of rousing atmosphere, and look, I think there's been a lot of unsavoury stuff going on, hasn't there, in the last couple of weeks in the world and in our country in particular. And I think we desperately are ready for football to come back. I think I mentioned something on Twitter today. There's nothing. Very few things that unite communities like the love of a shared love of a football team. And I think the great thing about football is blind to all that sort of stuff that's been dogging our lives at the minute. Religion, race, politics, all that kind of stuff. You stood next to a bloke in the pub or in the stands, and your team scores, and you're hugging that stranger, and none of that stuff really matters. Football's blind to all of that, and I think we all really need that positive injection in our lives. So I just can't wait for the season to start. I think it's going to be, particularly from a Forest point of view, it's going to be great. But I just think as a country and as communities, we really need the return of football, and it can't happen soon enough for me. So bring it on.
Very good. Good stuff, chaps. Good stuff. What's with the hidden pick behind you? There's no hidden pick behind me, Glenn, is there? Is there something with it? I mean, my wife did that picture, so she's very, very disappointed if you're not liking it, Glenn. Yes, right. Good words, Paul. Good words, Pete. Thoughts with Chris. And the other thing I was going to say again, just mentioning the members forum, members social last night. I mean, I don't push membership too much. I leave that to Pete because I'm kind of conscious I don't want to create a division in the listenership because I do go, I like Paul says about community. I do see the podcast as a bit of a community. But the membership is like a community within that, and it does help me do this full time. So it was great to see people come down to the NAV, people coming down on their own. But by a couple of minutes later, they were sat with other Forest fans, chatting amongst themselves for ages, for a good couple of hours. A good couple of hours more if you're Pete Blackburn, who got away from Greg Mitchell in the end, and is here tonight back on the red wine. So yes, well done, chaps. Right. There is normally a live show on Monday, but there won't be this week because I'm away for a couple of days. So I spoke to Dan Story yesterday, and we had some interesting chats about Forest on and off the pitch, about a couple of players. So that is out on Monday, and then I shall be back on Wednesday. Hopefully, that's the plan as we build towards Olympiacos and any other transfer news. Good to have 350 people with us tonight. Like I say, do hit like on the video. Always makes a big difference. Can't find the clip. So I won't keep adding. I found it. Yeah, hit like. Do become a channel member. Do subscribe. It's getting quite late, isn't it? And do leave us a lovely review on iTunes or Spotify. Paul Morley, thank you very much.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Good to have you with us. Pete Blackburn, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Absolute pleasure. Love to see you both.
It was. I thought there was going to be a follow-up to that, some kind of comment, but no, that's it.
No,
Just good wishes.
I'm keeping my counsel to myself.
Save it for another day. Exactly. Right. I'm going to say have a good evening. There's only an hour left of the day. Have a good weekend, everyone. And if we don't see you on Monday, then hopefully we shall see you soon.